Amazing. Well, great to see everyone. Before we get started off into this main part, I just wanted to get a really good idea of just what's going on in the room. Because as your feet were saying, we have these sales process to basically to streamline, to make sure we can make as much money as possible, to promote our services as best we can. But the real reason why we have the sales process in place is because, I mean, can I just get a show of hands in the room? How many people started their business because they love what they do? Good. That's a solid half of the room. That's excellent to see. Now, who also was under the misguided impression that they might get to do more of what they actually set up their business to do than what they actually get to? And often the reason is that they don't tell us that there's a whole bunch of sales and marketing. There's a whole bunch of potentially networking. There could be also all of these bookkeeping, all of these things that we weren't really knowing that we were going to have to do in our business. And it's things like having a sales process that can actually really make that a lot more streamlined so that we can actually do a lot more of what we set up our business to do. So luckily for us, we're habitual creatures and we're wired to create processes to conserve time and energy. Unfortunately, that the emphasis is more on creating those processes rather than making sure that those processes are actually efficient or that they actually work. Now, this results in one of two different things. So one, we do the same thing over and over again, and we're expecting a different result, which some say is the definition for insanity. But at the time, it can just feel like it's really good common sense. Other times, we change what we're doing to create a different outcome. And that's where having a really efficient and effective sales process is a really brilliant example of this in the business world. Now, we say this, and yet often this can be the Achilles heel in a business where we either don't have a sales process, or the sales process that we have just isn't very efficient, or it isn't providing reliable results. And this can really stop us in our business. Can I just get, again, just a quick show of hands, who has a sales process in some way, shape, or form at the moment? Got a few? Okay, excellent. Who has a sales process that is really efficient and it's pumping out the right kind of results month in, month out? Okay, less hands there. Yeah, well, one. Okay, Ian, there was a bit of a sheepish hand there, and I think with this, it's always about, it can be efficient, but we can always look to be making these things better as well. So that's excellent. And the other, who has a process who doesn't really give reliable results? Some months it'll do really, really well, and other months not so much. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Now, anyone who didn't put up their hands, I'm just going to assume that you either don't have a sales process as yet, which I'm sure that your feet will have some great tips there, or possibly you've signed up for the wrong webinar by mistake. So this could be, a bit relevant for you. Amazing. So there's a mix there, and kind of going back to something your feet said a little bit earlier, I just want to really put out there that there's nothing right or wrong. We're going to be talking about preferences and also some ways that might be considered good business sense. But I would just get everyone to consider that there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's no such thing as good or bad. There's no such thing as success or failure when it comes to these things. It's really just preferences. They're indications of where you're at this point in time. And it's really just about noticing these things as they are and just objectively observing that this is what reality is right now. And also it could highlight some really good opportunities for some quick gains and some growth. So back to this slide. Okay, so what is one of the big reasons why we don't actually have a sales process? Well, a big reason why we don't do what we feel like we should be doing. Now, my view on this is a lot of it comes down to fear. So if there's something that you know will make life easier, you know it'll give you your time back, and if you just know it's in general good business sense, and yet we still find reasons not to do it or not to make it as efficient as it can possibly be, it's because we have some sort of fear there, or we're not completely clear, or we don't completely understand why it's important. And often that comes from being afraid to say that we don't really understand it, we don't really know why we're doing it, which again comes back to being fear. So it's like often there's fear, and it could be quite a few layers down. Now, some of you might be saying, like, what does fear have to do with business? Or fear is a little bit touchy-feely. Does that really have anything to do with this? I'm a big believer that there are very few actual business problems in the world. And more often than not, we are business owners experiencing human problems rather than humans experiencing business problems. So an example of this on the slide that I've used here is that so it was the ineffective marketing and sales. Now, often you probably all heard the saying, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we're having some issues where we don't really feel like we're putting our message across in our marketing and sales, it could be indicative of how we're communicating in our personal life as well. We might not find that we're getting the right kind of results that we want in our personal relationships just because we do have a little bit of a breakdown in how we communicate with people, or we're not being our authentic self. Another example of this is someone who might have perfectionist tendencies. They have a huge fear of judgment and failure. Sometimes this will be because they just really want to deliver high levels of quality, but other times it's really driven by fear, and it's because they're absolutely petrified that if they deliver subpar work, that will mean something really poorly about them, whereas it's really not a reflection of a person, it's just their behavior. So it's just really, really good to one, separate behavior from identity, your personal identity, as well as the business's identity, and just really look at these things as behaviors, and you're always looking to improve them and to get better and better and better. And I think one other thing here that I just want, and again, it's just something to consider, is that a lot of business owners, me included in that, we want different strategies, different tactics. Like, what's the new way that we can all, get 10 clients in the next 10 minutes or whatever every other marketing post on LinkedIn is saying. And it's just really about, seeing in that, is what I have actually good? And there's just something on me, something about me and how I'm executing it that I need to look at, rather than putting the blame out here on the strategies and tactics. Just putting in a bit of an inquiry just to see if there's anything that you need to be doing differently in how you're executing it, and really just owning your results as well as the actions that you're putting into it, just to see if it's in fact new strategies and tactics, or if it's just something that you're working on. You can just go to the next slide, please, Yafi.
You can do it yourself, I believe.
Can I?
Maybe not, because you're a co-host, but I could be wrong. But I've moved it on for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so just looking at some of the main reasons why business owners don't have an effective sales process in place. And again, this isn't just not having a sales process full stop, but they might have a sales process, but it's just not as effective as they would like it to be. So it's, again, like when we're looking at behavior, there's a lot comes down to patterns. So if we're putting up with the same thing for quite a long period of time with no change in, we're not taking any action, or we haven't actually changed the result, then there's a pattern going on for us that we're stuck in. So it's just good just to notice these things. Now, these are the common ones that I've come across in all of the businesses that I've worked in, as well as ones that I've come across in myself. So I just want to put that out there. This is me kind of sharing vulnerability on where I've kind of fallen prey to some of these things in the past. And I think it's sometimes in that vulnerable sharing that people can kind of see themselves in your examples, and they can kind of be like, well, because especially on LinkedIn, in the professional world, we can think we have to be perfect. If we're not perfect, then that means that we're not trustworthy. People can't work with us. And we just make it mean a whole lot of things about us. But it's really in this vulnerable sharing that we all kind of just see that we're human at the end of the day, and we've all got value that we're bringing to the table. So the first one that I came across was that they feel like that they're too small. So they don't have a sales process or an effective sales process, because they just feel like they're too small. It's like one day when I get to a certain size, then I'll start doing things properly. Then I'll start to have processes in place. And often it can be this thinking that keeps that business or that person small and unable to go to the next level. It's kind of like they're just thinking in where they're at now rather than where they want to be. Or sometimes there will actually be times where they're able to get to that next level, but inevitably, as they get busier, they also have many more things that are vying for their time. And just suddenly, whether we're going to take this time and spend it to put in a process and streamline things, suddenly that just keeps on getting kicked down the road into that mythical and magical day where they just suddenly have all of this time, which I think we all know from experience just never seems to happen. So there's also a fear here. So again, like this is kind of, if you look a couple of layers down, there's often a fear. And this is the fear of what happens if I get too busy too quickly, or if I get too big, and then I could lose control, and then I could lose it all. So you have they have this desire to grow and accelerating you forward, but also there's that fear of uncertainty that's really putting on the brakes. So if you imagine a car that's got its foot down on the floor on the accelerator, and then also the hand up on the handbrake and the foot on the brake, you've got energy that's pulling you in two different directions, and that causes a lot of internal conflict. And it's a really, it's not a very good position to be in, because you feel like you should be doing this and you should be doing that, rather than what do I actually want to be doing here. So again, like a lot of this always comes back to authenticity. Can anyone relate to this here, where they felt at some point in their business that they just feel like they're too small for something? Like one day they will go and they will do all these things properly, but for now they're too small to do any of that. Does anyone relate to that? Yeah. And again, like none of this is right or wrong, good or bad. These are just really indications of where we're at in our business, and also preferences of where we're at the moment. I really love the Charles Spurgeon quote here that says, "Begin as you mean to go on." And that's just, if you want a business that's of a decent size, like start adopting some of the practices that a bigger business would, or how they would do business. And also similarly, dress for the job that you have, not the job that you want. And I think one thing here, I think that even if we do see ourselves as small, that's a story that we're telling ourselves. Like a lot of how we're socialized will tell us that, you're only like, it does keep us quite small. And that's a story, and it's a BS story. So if we're going to tell ourselves stories, why not tell ourselves, stories on how we see ourselves as the giant that we already are? And that way we have something to step into rather than something to withhold. Another reason that I hear quite a bit is, I wouldn't have a clue how clients find me. I have no idea where they look. I have no idea how they make their decisions. Now, this one, really deep down, if you go a few layers down, and this can sting a little bit, really there's a fear of intimacy and rejection here. There's a fear of letting your clients in, really getting to know them, finding out what they like, what they don't like, and you running away when things get intense or a little bit uncomfortable with that person, rather than just kind of using that as an opportunity to lean in and really get to know and understand someone. There's no depth, loyalty, trust in a relationship without intimacy, and you can't reach that level unless you're prepared to get rejected. So that's, I'll be the first when I started my business, this was the one that really took me a long time to get over. It took a huge amount for me to stay when I felt uncomfortable. All I wanted to do was run and hide. But I've learned holding yourself in that situation, being comfortable in the discomfort, really allows you to be, and also your client as well, to be seen and to heard. And that's the only way that you can really connect to the people that you're committed to serving. Next one. So another reason business owners don't have an effective sales process in place is that they don't know how to create a sales process, or it's too complicated, or they're not techie, or they don't do funnels, all of that sort of stuff, all of the stuff that your feed is really good at. So this one is probably one of the most common ones that I hear, and it's that they really don't want to make mistakes. They really don't want to, ultimately it's that they don't want to fail. So the real kicker here though is that you can learn anything on Google and YouTube, anything that you want, and it's free, and we could all do it. But the real truth here is that if you tried, there's a real possibility that you could fail. And if we succeed, suddenly we're succeeding, and a lot more people are seeing that we're succeeding. And then we have to be able to sustain that. And often the fear of success is really a fear of failure, because what happens if we succeed, more people are looking at us, and then we just fail, but we fail in front of more people. So that's one to look out for there. I think this is one that we can all relate to at times, and I think it's to our credit as business owners. This is one that we really have to push through. Another one is, I don't have enough time to do this. Now, this one is pretty counterintuitive. I don't have time to do something that's going to give me back my time. Doesn't really make sense. But there's a combination of a few things happening here. So one, it's a fear of failure, as well as possibly being very busy, not necessarily productive, but spreading yourself very thin, and potentially maybe losing sight of what's actually important. And often it's around feeling like you have to do everything, you're the best at doing everything, even some of the more menial jobs that you want to be passing out. But it's really not wanting to drop any of the balls, and kind of not even wanting to drop any of the balls to see actually which ones aren't actually all that important and that you don't need to be doing. So most important thing here is priorities, really just understanding what is the most important thing. We can do a million things horribly, or we can do a few things brilliantly.
Next slide.
Yes, please. Thank you. Amazing. So most important thing about fear is that it only has a hold over you while it stays hidden, or if we're in denial, because often we can soften, we can deny that there's fear there, because we don't want people to know that we might feel it. But as long as it stays hidden, that's when it has power over us. The moment you take ownership of it is the moment you get back in the driver's seat. And fear is often scary because we don't know whether what you want is possible. One of the biggest things here is finding a role model. Find someone who is already achieving what you want to be achieving. And once you know that something is possible in the world and you see evidence of it, then that's where you can really break through some of these things once you know it can happen. Another thing I would say there is, when you're looking at what these role models are doing, is remember that very little in this world is original, and amateurs borrow and professionals steal, naturally within the confines of like copyright and trademark law. But very little out there is actually original work. And on the other side of fear is freedom. It only takes a few seconds of courage and action to break through what can be some scary moments and to completely liberate yourself there. Just to get a show of hands, who can think of a time where they've been absolutely petrified of doing something, but in spite of that, they've still pushed through and they've overcome it, and then they've pushed themselves out there and they've gone and done that thing anyway that they were scared of? Amazing. And it's often just recognizing that we have experience of these things and knowing that we can keep on doing them again and again and again. And that's how we keep on pushing outside of our comfort zone. We get a little bit bigger every single time. Go the next slide, please, Jeffy. Amazing. Thank you. So this is just a few different areas on how people are motivated to make buying decisions. The other thing about, just to sort of finish off on fear, is that if you know what your potential clients are looking for and what motivates their buying decision, that can take a lot of fear out of it as well. A lot of the time, fear is just not understanding a particular situation. So there's many different things that motivate behavior. So from physical needs to fear to values to beliefs, most of which are quite contextual. For example, you might want a Ferrari in red, but the thought of a red Honda, no offense to anyone in the room that has a red Honda, might sound a bit ridiculous to you. Or you might be opposed to murder, but the death penalty may be acceptable in a particularly horrific case. So there's some context that's involved there. What we're looking at here is something that is less likely to be contextual, and it's a different kind of programming. So it's a way of being that we are, and it's more consistent across different areas of your life. And if you think about this like a DJ mixing board, or like you would see in a sound producer's studio, just with these dials. And if you imagine that there's a slider going from left to right for each of these, just to give you an indication of which side of the scale these are on and at what kind of intensity. So we'll be looking at. So if everyone can just really just spend a few seconds just bringing to mind their favorite customer, like the person that they walk into, you see them, or you jump on a Zoom call with them, whatever the case might be, and you're actually excited to jump on that call, and just seeing them brings a smile to your face, and you really get that they value what you do, they really appreciate what you do, and they get a lot of value from it. And most importantly, they are happy to pay you what you're worth. There's never any quibbles around value. So knowing where your favorite clients' preferences sit on this sliding scale, that'll help you to communicate with more people that are just like them in your marketing, and you'll also be better equipped to predict their behavior when it comes to creating an effective sales process that's going to lead more of them to you. So the first one that we're looking at here is the motivation between towards. Is your favorite customer motivated towards achievement, reward, success, or are they moving away from or trying to solve or avoid pain, problems, and discomfort. You may have heard this described as the old carrot and stick. So this will help you because you know exactly how to speak to potential customers in your marketing. Insurance broker or Steve might say something, are you at risk of something to do with health or the insurance? And that's just really noticing that those people are worried about their health, they're worried about their insurance. So you're meeting that need, you're showing them that you understand what matters to them, and then you're presenting your product. Same as on the other side, you might have like a luxury brand, and they might talk about looking successful or feeling like a queen. And this really comes in handy when it comes to your sales process, because you could be running a competition. Again, for those people that are motivated towards something, you might run a competition that has prizes. Or say, for example, a car mechanic might schedule a call every year to make sure to remind their clients that they need to be bringing their car in for a service. Otherwise, something bad might happen to them, or just to stop anything from bad happening. Now, so and it might be interesting to see. What I'll do is at the end, if anyone wants like a worksheet with this, just to kind of sit down with this and really pinpoint where their favorite clients are. And it might also be interesting exercise for you to pinpoint where you are on these scales as well, just to really get an understanding of your preferences. So I'll send that out. But just really, as we go through these, just really trying to find out where your favorite client sits on this side of things. If you don't know where they might sit, might be a good idea to jump on a call with one of them and kind of just interview them. Use this sheet, and then you'd be able to just give them a score out of 1 to 10 on where they feel like they are on that. And that'll really help you to put a lot of this together. The next one is, and again, just remember with these, like, none of them are good nor bad, right or wrong. These are just preferences, and these are just how people are. And this just enables us to be able to predict or have a better understanding of their behavior. Next up is, are they internally referenced or externally referenced, which is the second one down. So what this means is that people who are internally referenced have a strong sense of what is right and wrong for them based on their own standards. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is externally referenced, and they're the people that are looking for recommendations or expert advice. So knowing this will really help you. It'll really help you in the sales process side of things, because it'll tell you whether you should be selling directly to them, or if you should be using more testimonials, case studies, joint venture partnerships where they will be endorsing you, because they're the people that they're looking for someone to tell you that this is the right thing for them. And this will all inform their buying decisions. So again, just noticing, one, where you feel like you are on each side of the scale. Are you more internally referenced? Do you know when something is right for you? Or are you more likely to go for the expert advice or a recommendation? And then just thinking about where your favorite customer might sit on this scale as well. The third one down is options and procedures. So knowing whether your favorite client is options, which is they want freedom of choice, they like creativity, they like to have just some real flexibility in how they buy. Whereas on the procedure side of things, they like structure, they like predetermined ways of doing things. Which is following a procedure. That offers a huge advantage, knowing which is which, because on the sales side of things, if you only have one option that you can offer people, and someone is more of an options-based thinker, or that's just their preference, they might feel a little bit boxed in. If there's only one option and they would prefer a range of options, that it's going to make them feel a little bit restricted. Whereas on the other side of things, if someone is a procedures or has a preference for procedures, they might and you have lots of different options that you can offer them. In that instance, that person might get overwhelmed very quickly, and then they might not choose to buy at all. There's a saying, a confused mind doesn't buy. So just really understanding, what your favorite client likes when it comes to that, or what their preference is a huge help when it comes to putting together a sales process. So again, just having a look at where you feel like you might be on that. Are you options based, where you like to have a lot of different options, or do you like just one specific or a predetermined way of doing things? So just noticing what that is for you, and also what that might be for your favorite client. The fourth one down is sameness or difference. So this one you'll have seen in many, many, many different places, especially when it comes to marketing. And also when it comes to your friends as well. So this is the person who always goes to the same restaurant. They always eat the same dish. And they might opt for the iPhone 13 after loving the iPhone 12. So they're getting a new phone, but it's a new iteration of something that already exists. They prefer sameness in their upgrade. Now, the different people are the people who are prepared to go adventuring, to find new places, to try different things in different areas. And they're always just mixing it up and trying something different. They might even get a completely new phone or look for an alternative to a phone. This will help you in your marketing, as it'll tell you whether your favorite client wants to hear the same messages, the same copy, or if they want a variety of groundbreaking new different ways of talking about your services. So it'll also help whether to run the same strategy for your sales process all the time, or if a few strategies might be a better fit. The fifth is their convincer strategy. So this is how people make their buying decisions. And it's made up of two parts. One are they more visual? Are they more auditory? Or are they more kinesthetic in terms of do they need to touch and feel something? So things to listen out for would be, this looks right for me, this sounds right to me, or this feels right to me. So it's really them talking about which sense that they use to really make their buying decision. The other part of this, which is on the sliding scale, is can they hear it once? So there's some people who are early adopters who are very decisive, that only need to hear something once and then that's it. Or do they need to hear it a few times, which is going to impact the sales process, because it will impact the length of the sales process. So if they're automatic, if they only need to hear it once, it's obviously a much shorter sales process. If they need to hear it quite a few times, that might make for a longer sales process. Some quite a few more emails in there just to keep the touch points up to cater to their preference. And again, just noticing where you might be on this scale. The second last one is general or specific. Now, everyone's probably heard of this one. General is, are you a big picture thinker? And specific is, are you a detail person? So it's whether or not you look for the big picture or the detail. So for marketing, this is a really important one, because this will tell you whether or not your copy, whether it's posts, website, whatever the case might be, needs to be really long and detailed, or if it needs to be really short with really punchy, exciting ideas in there. So it'll also have an impact on your sales process as well, because it'll impact the length of the sales process, because general big picture people are are usually very quick to make decisions. So again, it will affect the length of the sales process. And detail oriented people like to see a lot more detail. Any information that you send them will need to have all of the specs and all of the ins and outs that they really, really want to know before they feel comfortable making a decision. And last but certainly not least, there's a preference of proactivity versus reactivity. So now this will tell you whether you will have to hold their hand every step of the way, or if you can dangle your offer in front of them and let them snap it up of their own accord. So this will give you a much clearer understanding of which phrases to use in your call to action. So for someone who is proactive, it could be something like buy now. For someone who's reactive, they might be looking to get more information first. And this will dramatically impact the sales process. Reactive people might want to see a lot of your content. They might like to follow you for a while to get a real kind of feel for who you are and whether you're their kind of person. Join your mailing list, consider scheduling a call, and then they'll let you talk them through the options. Whereas someone who has a proactive preference, they might be much more open to buying after doing a chat sequence, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook. Or you might even just be able to send them directly to a landing page where there is some sort of e-commerce or a sign-up page or a buy now function. So again, like just really noticing where you are on that scale. Are you more of a proactive buyer, or are you more of a reactive buyer? And how do you like to be led down that process? And then just thinking about what that is for your favorite client as well. And just the last slide, please. Thanks, Jeffrey. And the last part, I just want to. Yes, yeah. This is it. So if there's something that you want in business or life, and you don't have it, again, like people might connect with this, you might not. But it's just if there is something you want in life, there's something that's holding you back, whether it's not understanding, whether it's fear, whatever the case might be. it is often fear that's like, as low down as possible. And we've been conditioned to settle for the life that we have rather than going after what we really want. And life is far too short for that. So make the known known, and fear loses its hold over you as soon as you kind of really get a good understanding of it. And then a world of opportunities opens up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.